Greetings, ladies and gentlefish, and welcome to 2023. We are very firmly in the new year at this point, and firstly, I hope you all had a fun, relaxing, enjoyable little time over the festive period. Whether you celebrate Christmas or not, I hope you enjoyed. I thought we'd kick off this year by going back to something I said at the beginning of last year. So, many moons ago, I spoke about trying to set myself a New Year's resolution to eat into that pile of hobby shame, I suppose you'd call it, be it video games, books, getting miniatures painted because I'm a massive nerd, whatever it happens to be. I wanted to try and reduce the amount that I had just stuck in boxes. The question is, has this been achieved? Well, I gave a couple of update videos over the year. Here or there, as I've explained in other videos, circumstances made that more difficult than I was expecting, and I thought we'd round out the second half of that year here. So, I broke this down into a few different categories. I'm not going to go through the scoring system that I'm using. The point is, just want to give a general impression of how things went, because, you know, you review your resolutions from a year gone by. Isn't that how it works, right? Anyway, so we're going to be looking at stuff from July through to December 2022. Firstly, I'm not going to show pictures of it, but there were some books that got read and bought, ranging from Pratchett books, Wintersmith, for example, to some Dan Abnett, and finally bought the Millennium Trilogy, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and so on. I appreciate that is rather behind everyone else in the world, but yeah, I finally found it and bought it. It was from a charity shop. Yeah, so I've got some pictures of miniatures to show you, and we'll see how we get on. And we are kicking off proceedings with, well, this was supposed to be reducing the pile of shame, but that's not what this picture shows. So I had a friend of mine. He was actually the best man at my wedding. Old friend from school, goes back years. We've known each other since we were like 4 years old. And he got in touch with me and said, I got a bunch of models that I'm selling on the cheap if you want them. I asked Loki if I was allowed to get some. She said yes. I said how many, and she suggested that provided that we could afford it, she was happy for me to buy as many as I thought reasonable, provided they were at a good enough discount. So I bought some, and this is the picture of them after they arrived on the dining room table. Whoops. I'm going to come back to this at the end, and we'll discuss a few purchases I have made, because obviously I was trying to make an effort here not to really buy much stuff and just to get stuff painted. But we will revisit this at the end, so July hasn't got off to the best start in that regard. So let's get on with things that I've actually painted. We kick off proceedings with some absolutely ancient models. These are Necron Destroyers from 2nd edition, originally. So for those of you who are familiar with Warhammer 40,000, 2nd edition places these things sort of early to mid-90s. So this is 30 years old at this point, or these models are 30 years old. Now I didn't necessarily, or in fact I didn't buy them at the time. I bought them sometime later, but they've been floating around for a little while. One of these models was constructed and painted from scratch. The other three were repaints. I had painted them previously and wasn't very happy with them, so I've done them again. This is what one of them looks like a bit up close. You can see I'm trying to go for these sort of glow effects here or there where I think they're appropriate, and broadly speaking, I think they've worked out okay. The bases, by the way, are not your standard bases. These are 60mm circles of MDF painted up and with a transparent flight stand put in them, because why the hell not, frankly. So we had these guys, which, you know, I was fairly happy with. At this point I've kind of got how I like to paint these guys pretty much down pat. It's relatively straightforward. And for anyone who's interested in painting robots and glow effects, I might throw together something if anyone thinks these look alright. We'll see in the future how it goes. Next up were the Heavy Destroyant variants. These are from the 2002 release of the 3rd edition Codex, so these models are still 20 years old. These were a repaint. I painted these the first time round, and this is redoing the job. And again, I'm fairly pleased with how these guys have come out. You've got some glow effects going on here or there, where appropriate, and the highlighting I've managed to do with dry brushing, so it didn't take too much time. Managed to pick out insignia here or there, decent brushwork. You know, I'm fairly happy with how these guys have turned out. That was kind of July. Now, this was August or September, can't quite recall. I think this might have been August. This is a Malignant Plaguecaster. Most of these models are going to be 40k. In fact, I think all of them that I'm going to show you in this video are going to be from 40k. This is a Malignant Plaguecaster. I picked this up as part of a half of a starter set from like 2018 or something for 8th edition. And tried to get this guy painted up, and broadly speaking, I'm quite happy with how he has come out. These were some of my... So what I was trying to do here, especially if we have a look at the sort of cloud, been eating far too many Parma Violets, as a friend of mine said. What I was trying to do here was really experiment with how I could build up subtle, I suppose, layers of colouring to get highlights in that cloud. So it's sort of it's quite a dark purple is the base colour, but then I've built it up and highlighted it with gradual mixes of this kind of pinky purple colour, and it's come out alright. My photography is lacking a little bit, but it's come out alright. The staff is quite interesting. If you're interested in miniature painting, you might have noticed people have made a lot of fuss about transparent paints over the last few years. So the staff was just, I'd primed this model in grey, and the staff was not a transparent paint. I literally just watered down a brown paint and used that, and the paint goes into the recesses more and doesn't stay on the raised surfaces some more, so what you get is some cheap, easy highlighting done for you, which is nice, but without buying a really expensive contrast paint or speed paint or whatever you're going to call them. That was just done with a regular acrylic paint. Partially, I don't really know why people are making such a fuss about all these transparent paints, but there we go. C'est la vie. So I was quite happy with how this guy came out. There you can see his Parma Violet cloud in a bit more detail, or from the other side, I should say. Yeah, that was what I was trying to achieve with this model. These days, I try and achieve something with most of my paint projects or construction projects relating to hobby stuff, and that's what this one was trying to achieve. Yeah, I got one more photo of this guy from the back. Ta-da! So then we move on to another character. This is a Biologus Putrefier, and this was really trying to experiment with trying to paint glass vials and bottles. He's got these things mainly on his back. If we got a side shot, we have, but my photography isn't the best. He's holding one bottle in one hand, and then he's got some more bottle on his back, and I'm afraid my photography has kind of let us down a little bit, but that's what I was trying to mainly achieve with this model, trying to experiment with how to paint those. I was also experimenting a little bit with skulls in the past. I've just done them fairly simply. Paint, wash, dry brush, but this was none of that. This was gradually building up layers, going from a brown into a sort of bony, creamy colour, and trying to see how easily I could build those layers up myself with just some regular acrylic paint. So I was trying to experiment with some different techniques. And I was quite happy with how this guy came out. Again, my photography isn't necessarily the best, but I was quite happy with how the model actually came out itself. Then we move on to this thing. So this was a cheap old model that I picked up from eBay. Was actually towards the end of 2021. It was in that, I think it was in that period between Christmas and New Year 2021. So what I picked up was just this really poor condition Ultramarines Predator. Predator's the name of this tank. So as you're looking at this picture, anything that was already painted in blue and whatnot is as the model came. Now when I say it's in poor condition, it was in very poor condition. There were gaps where the plastic had been glued together poorly. The two side sponson guns, just loose. They didn't fit on. There was a guy poking out of the turret. There's, you know, you can see I've added some stuff in this picture. So you can see I've added green stuff here to cover up some of the problematic areas, shall we say. And my idea with this model was I picked this up really quite cheap for what it is. And so I was going to experiment with trying out some weathering effects and dirty this thing up and whatnot, so that those kind of more dubious areas wouldn't look as conspicuous. So I've taken an old spare head from an old metal Greater Demon model, because I'm painting this up to be part of the Chaos Forces. And I've put that over the front. I've kind of used a fair amount of green stuff, moulded on some kind of buboes and whatnot. This is what it looked like essentially after I'd finished some conversion work. I've put a Havoc missile launcher on the turret, things like that. But before I painted it, so that was what the machine looked like. Here you can see it from a slightly different angle. You can see I've put some buboes around the tank because I'm painting this up as a Nurgle tank, so, you know, buboes and spots and pestilence for the win. Woo! And then in a moment you can see it after I've actually painted it. Ta-da! And I think it's actually come out looking fairly decent. My logic was that, you know, the nice thing about painting up chaos stuff in 40k is you can, especially if it's Nurgle, you can pretty much get away with anything in terms of modelling and whatnot. So the head on the front of this tank, it doesn't give it any extra rules in game or anything like that, but it's a bit of fun, and it harks back to a model that I first saw in the 3rd edition rulebook, and someone had modelled their Predator to have this demon face on the front, and I think they had a hand and a pointing finger and all that jazz. So it was just kind of a little bit of a throwback to that. And again, I was quite happy with how this thing turned out. I was playing around, so I was trying to do these weathered effects. I've got this sort of muddy texture paste. You can actually see the tub on the right hand side there, that black tub from AK Interactive that gives some nice sort of mud effects, especially if you cover it in gloss varnish, which I've done here. It makes it look like it's still wet. And this was a lot of fun to do. I did some highlighting on the demon face, tried to make it look quite fleshy. Thought I'd go for a bit of a contrast, which is why the tongue, that also has a mouth, because of course it does, is sort of a purple and blue colour, as opposed to the more fleshy colour of the rest of the face. Here you can see the side. I've tried to paint those sort of buboes and whatnot to look like they're quite sore spots, zits. Some were more successful than others, but fine. I've added a very watered down bit of turquoise paint around a lot of these rivets. Try and give the impression that it's a bit of rust and weathering. So when you look at, if you look at the colours, because I have done, if you look at the colours of different types of rust, rust, for what it's worth, by the way, is it's just as what you get as a metal oxidizes. So in the case of iron or steel, what we're used to seeing is a variety of iron oxides, and one of the most common iron oxides is a sort of reddy, browny, orangey colour, which is what we typically associate with rust. In the case of copper, it can go this, one of the oxides is this sort of lovely bluey, greeny, turquoisey colour, and that's what I've tried to put on here. I'll be honest, because I wanted to use a turquoise paint and I don't get an opportunity to use them very often, and I got a couple. So, yeah. Moving on from the tank, this was this is 6 Plague Marines. This is from 2nd edition, these models. These are, so the 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5 model, I can count, the 5 models on the left are all plastic. The one on the right with the plasma gun is a metal model. And the guy on your far left, as you're looking at this picture with the 2 knives, he needed a lot of conversion work because someone had previously converted him from one of the normal Marines to look a little bit different, and they'd done a pretty god-awful job, frankly. And so I've kind of tried to redo some of that work, make the best of it that I can, and painted these guys up. I'm fairly happy with how they've come out. You can see this is the Knifey McKnifington up close. I'd be interested to see if you guys can suggest where you think the person who originally did the conversion work on this had, let's say, made some mistakes. It's probably pretty obvious, but again, it's Nurgle. You can get away with pretty much anything. This is another guy armed with a bolt gun. Again, my photography isn't necessarily the best. Chap with a flamer, and there's the plasma gunner on the far side. The lighting wasn't the best in this picture either, I will be honest. Moving on, we've got some Terminators. Now, my Chaos Terminators started off life as Loyalists, and then I converted them by giving them spiky bits to be Chaos Terminators, and now they're not legal like that, and so I had to convert them again and give them different weapons. So these are not models that I've painted from scratch. I just did some conversion work and painted bits up here or there. And basically the main bits I've done here are the left-hand arms, i.e. the sword arms of the two models at the front you can see there, and there's a couple of models in the background. So this chap, that arm is I wasn't going to spend loads of time on it, but that arm is new, so to speak. And this chap, his axe is new. Again, I wasn't going to spend loads of time on this, and I'm not changing everything that I did when I was whatever age I was when I did these guys. But I wanted to at least make them legal in the game. And then finally we've got a whole bunch of Necron Warriors, and there you can see the sort of glow effects that I've been going for with these guys without the use of fancy schmancy types of paint. This is all just done with regular bog standard acrylic paint. The fanciest thing I've got there is sort of some 20 years old, a 20-year-old pot of dark green acrylic ink. But yeah, but they've come out pretty well. I like the glow effects on these guys. Paint the bodies of your robot dudes relatively simply, and then you putting these glow effects on, which I kind of looked for some advice on, and then sort of made it up a little bit as I went, and it's come out all right. I'm quite happy with those. And that's all the pictures I was going to show you. So I guess the real question for anyone who's made it this far into this video is, did we do it? Did I manage to achieve my objective with the New Year's resolution, which, if you remember, was to reduce my pile of shame? So basically I was scoring everything, and I was scoring it like golf. So a negative score was in my favour and indicated that I'd got stuff done. A positive score was against me and indicated that I'd bought stuff like a naughty boy. Now, I have bought things over the years, but overall, my score for the year was minus 42, which isn't half bad. Was it minus 42? No, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong bit. Minus 56, which isn't half bad. That means that, yes, I have managed to reduce my pile of shame. Now, there were a few things I bought. I bought the Millennium Trilogy of books. I'm not going to feel guilty about that. I bought it cheap. I bought it from a charity shop, and the charity in question was one that actually helped us, my dad in particular, shortly after my mum died earlier last year. So I didn't begrudge them the money, so I'm not worried about that. What else did I buy? The Predator tank that was technically bought last year, so that one doesn't count. There was a model that I bought very early this year, shortly after or shortly before I decided I was going to do this. Fine, whatever, I'm not going to complain too much about that. The big purchase for this year was buying all those models from my friend that I showed you at the beginning of this video. That was a weird one-off thing. It's not the sort of thing I would expect to do all the time, but it was taking advantage of an opportunity. Interesting to see, though, that even with that, I was able to get a decent result out at the end. So yes, essentially, I did complete my New Year's resolution. Woohoo! Isn't that nice? Wonder how you guys did with any resolutions you've made. And it's interesting, actually. If anyone does ever want to do anything like this, you know, you want to eat into your pile of shame, or you want to get through those computer games in your Steam library, or you want to get through the stack of books on your shelf, whatever your particular thing is, I have some thoughts on the process if you're interested. So I would say, 1, try and be relatively strict with yourself. You know, the whole point of this is that you don't get more stuff. You've already got plenty of stuff. You're just trying to enjoy the stuff that you've got. That makes sense. Don't be so strict with yourself that you feel bad, though. So, if an opportunity comes up, a really good opportunity, so for example, the models I bought from the mate of mine, is a very good opportunity to get some stuff relatively cheaply, and it would involve giving money to a friend as opposed to a giant faceless corporation, which, you know, I'd frankly rather give money to a mate. So it's an opportunity, right? So don't beat yourself up too much if you occasionally fly in the face of what you're trying to do. But try and make it so that your end result will be what you want it to be. So this year I'm going to try and do a very similar thing. I'm probably not going to put as much effort into, you know, calculating everything with a little score and whatnot. I might just keep tabs on the numbers of things I've painted or whatever. But it's something I would definitely like to do this year because, well, I think it worked out fairly well last year, frankly, and I'll happily do it again. Maybe you guys, or some of you guys, would consider doing something similar. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. Have you made your own New Year's resolutions for this year? Or did any that you make last year come to pass? Were you able to succeed? Or was it all just a little bit disappointing? Likewise, if you are interested or excited about what 2023 holds for you personally, by all means share if you want to. This will be an interesting year from my perspective. Hopefully some of those reasons will become apparent over the next few months. There are things in one's personal life that, again, will make life interesting. I'll mention those in the future when I can, frankly. But also there's a couple of things I would like to do, and a couple of videos or series of videos I would like to make, and just experiment with branching out a little bit and making some videos about other stuff that interests me. But some of the things I want to do are going to take some work. So I don't know how many videos I'm actually going to be able to make. As I say, they're going to require some work. Ranging from topics that I am interested in and would like to share some of that interest to things that I just think people don't understand very well. So some educational type videos, I suppose you could say. Don't worry, I'm not going to abandon stuff that's a bit of fun. But anyway, we shall see how it goes. I hope 2023 has kicked off to a good start for you and is treating you well. And I wish you all the best with it, and hopefully it won't be too long before I catch you guys in another video. Take care. Ciao, ciao.